Hi guys, thank you for joining me. Welcome back. My name is Catherine, and in today's episode number 5 of Missing the Missing, we're going to be talking about the case of Carmel Fenech. Carmel Michaela Fenech was born on the 3rd of July 1981 as a very tiny little baby to a Maltese father and a London-based mother by the name of Deirdre. She is one of 5 siblings and had been raised in a single-parent household. Carmel's father had left when she was very, very young and had therefore no influence over her formative years, something which to this day Deirdre wonders if that had a significant dent on her self-esteem. Carmel had what was described as a blissful childhood in a tight-knit, loving Christian family. Her life revolved around Sunday school and playing with the family German Shepherd dog named Bonnie. She was described as a funny kid, a clown, the class clown, a bit of a tomboy who got along much better with her older brother than her younger sister, though she absolutely adored children. Her mother recalled that she was feisty, opinionated, and, quote, utterly incorrigible, which means unable to be corrected or amended. Her favourite song was Puff Daddy, as he was known then, and Faith Evans' I'll Be Missing You. But Deirdre would obviously only appreciate the significance of that after Carmel disappeared. Carmel was known to dance around the living room to various music. Carmel is described as a white female with brown eyes and dark brown to black shoulder-length hair at the time that she went missing. She was of a slim build and about 5 foot tall, which is about 154 centimetres, give or take. She has a 2-inch horizontal scar in the middle of her forehead and is also described in a couple of places as having a scar towards her mouth, though that doesn't seem to show up in a lot of photographs, so I'm not sure that was entirely visible. She usually wears jeans and trainers, and she had been born with one leg shorter than the other, which did cause her to limp noticeably. As a result of this, Carmel was bullied quite significantly by the time she got to high school, which was St Saviour's and St Olave's School in South London. At the age of 14, Carmel asked her mother Deirdre if she could go to a 14th birthday party of one of her classmates, and obviously Deirdre said, yeah, by all means, go right ahead. However, unbeknown to Deirdre, also known as Dee, Carmel was actually introduced to crack cocaine at this party. Carmel became addicted and her personality began to change, but her mother put this down to typical teenage angst and didn't realise what was going on for quite a significant period of time. Carmel's behaviour also changed and she began staying out all night, claiming to be at various different friends' houses. She was labelled as a runaway and quickly started falling in with the wrong crowd. However, due to this, she was known to be streetwise and well able to take care of herself. Carmel and her family lived in the North Peckham estate, which is known not to be the most glamorous of places, and unfortunately was the scene of the year 2000 murder of 10-year-old Damilola Taylor. Deirdre found out about Carmel's addiction by the time Carmel was 15 through various neighbours and pleaded with her to stop. In an attempt to break Carmel's addiction and break the cycle, she moved the whole family via mutual exchange, including Carmel and 2 young siblings, from the North Peckham estate to a 3-bedroomed home in Moyne Road, Broadfield, Crawley, which is in West Sussex, so not too far away but far enough. The older 2 siblings had their own lives by this point. One of the older daughters, she had a child of her own, and they opted to remain in London, but the family remained very, very close. Deirdre noted, quote, "We wanted to give you a new start, away from the drugs and the squalor. It was a huge sacrifice for the children who had to say goodbye to their friends, but we loved you so much that we were prepared to do anything to keep you safe." However, Carmel did continue to return to the old places and people that were known to be a bad influence on her. Despite this, though, she would always return and did maintain contact with her mother, and throughout the whole time, they did remain on positive speaking terms. In the lead up to her disappearance, Carmel, who was described as always having high ambitions, she started truanting from school, she was smoking, and she did begin shoplifting. She had left school before she disappeared, but she did have plans to return to college and get some qualifications. Carmel also met an older man described as in his 30s and Jamaican, and he was a known drug dealer at the time. She believed she was really, really in love with this man and that he absolutely loved her as well. She referred to him as her boyfriend, and she began to frequent areas in Brixton and Lewisham, London, that were known for their criminal activity. Countless times, Deirdre would end up, in her own words, trawling the streets, looking for Carmel, only for her to later, quote, breeze in, sorry mum, it won't happen again. She was in a cycle spinning really, really quickly out of control at a time when it's natural to start rebelling against the authoritative figures in your life. Over time, Deirdre noticed that Carmel had become much paler and much thinner, and at one point her mum describes that she couldn't have weighed 5 stone and her clothes were hanging off her. At one of the court appearances for shoplifting, Deirdre begged the magistrates to lock up Carmel. She thought that this was probably one of the best ways to break the destructive cycle that was dragging her daughter down. However, the circumstances were such that this was not an option, and instead, Carmel was released back into the same toxic lifestyle. Carmel would be smiling at her mum. She would reassure her that she was okay, as if Deirdre was overreacting. She was so desperate to get her daughter the help that she needed that she even offered to take Carmel to the social services in Sussex herself and requested bail conditions to prevent Carmel from returning to the areas that she was known to frequent. Carmel absolutely despised her mum for this, and Deirdre found herself explaining to her, quote, I'm not doing this because I don't love you. I'm doing this because I do love you. Deirdre did everything, including putting herself in the firing line of her daughter, just to try and make sure that she was safe. Carmel was then placed into the care of the local authority and given a placement in a children's home where she would have total freedom during the days but would be expected to return during the night. When her mum finally acknowledged that by the sight of her she would be dead within 6 months, Carmel finally admitted, quote, I know I need help, mum, and I'm really going to get it this time. Shortly after that, she vanished. The first week in this children's home went quite well, with Carmel abiding by the terms and keeping up frequent contact with her mum. One morning, I think it was the 22nd of May, from what I can piece together back in 1998, she called Deirdre and said, quote, I might come and see you today, mum, which was not considered to be out of the ordinary. She then got onto the phone and had a conversation with her older sister, Mandy, from London, where she explained that Carmel felt she might have been pregnant by her 30-something-year-old drug-dealing alleged boyfriend. She mentioned to Mandy that she was going to go and see her mum and then go to London to tell him. As it turns out, she didn't go to her mum's that day. She went straight into London, and there's a period of time here that is unaccounted for, but the next that Deirdre heard was a telephone call from PC Matt Robinson at about 10 or 11 o'clock that same night, advising that Carmel had been arrested on shoplifting charges and would be appearing before Camberwell Magistrates Court the following morning. Deirdre couldn't make it down, she didn't drive, and she also had 2 young children to look after at home. So that following morning, Carmel appeared at Camberwell Magistrates Court, which is in Brixton in London, for these shoplifting charges. The magistrates asked her how much money she had on her. She said £6. They fined her £5 and let her walk out of the court with £1 to her name and no way to get home. This is the last confirmed sighting of Carmel. I think it's really important to point out here, though, that from what limited sources there are available, you'd be really surprised at how different the reports are, and so many of them wrongly claim that she disappeared from either her home in Crawley or one of the children's homes. Now, obviously, while it is true that she left the children's home to go to London, the last known sighting of her is that she disappeared from Camberwell Magistrates Court on the 23rd of May 1998 in Brixton, London. Carmel's disappearance, despite being noticed straight away, was not reported straight away based on her history of leaving of her own accord, and prior experience told Deirdre that she would return of her own accord, or that Deirdre would be able to find her when she went looking. In the immediate aftermath, Deirdre wasn't too concerned given that things had always worked out, and she had a pre-arranged caravan holiday booked with the younger children who also needed a break. So she decided to take the children on this break for a week, and by the time they returned, Carmel would have returned and they could make a fresh start. However, when Deirdre returned with the children, Carmel hadn't returned, and unusually nobody had seen or heard from her. Deirdre went out to look for her. She was well known in the area. Nobody recalled seeing her. Nobody had any information, and something very quickly started registering as wrong for Deirdre. Carmel's mum said, quote, "I was so used to you vanishing for days that I didn't worry at first when I didn't hear from you. It was only when the days turned into weeks that I began to panic." Knowing that something wasn't quite right this time, that this was really out of character for Carmel, Deirdre went to Crawley police station to report Carmel missing again. She did everything in her power to make them aware that this was very out of character, something this time just wasn't right. But unfortunately, whether this was due to Carmel's known history either of run-ins with the law or leaving of her own accord, initial response was very slow and substandard. However, as we've mentioned, it was confirmed during the investigation that Carmel did genuinely believe she was in love with this 30-something-year-old drug dealer. He had been buying her things and giving her money now and then. Her friends were all questioned by the police, her friends in the drug scene as well. However, all of them claimed to know nothing. Carmel apparently used at least one, potentially more aliases in Brixton, though her family were unable to find out what these actually were. She had also changed her name between moving to Crawley and disappearing, from Fenech, which is her father's Maltese name, to Pendry, which is the surname of her older two siblings. So a lot of reports will list Carmel not as Carmel Fenech, but as Carmel Pendry. Her birth certificate is Carmel Fenech, but I believe she just started using the name Pendry. It was never changed legally. Inquiries were hampered by jurisdictional issues. West Sussex police were dealing with the missing persons report. I'm not quite sure why, because it was known that she didn't disappear from here. However, that was her home area, I suppose, but because she was known to have disappeared from London, the Metropolitan Police would be dealing with any inquiries, and there were delays and just issues in dealing with the whole situation. The drug dealer was sought out and questioned eventually by police, and while he did admit to knowing Carmel, he claimed that Carmel was merely a girl he knew and felt sorry for, that he used to give a bit of pocket money to now and then. There's not much in the way of key events or even much of a timeline, given that Carmel's case wasn't really handled very well from the beginning, but there are, a few things that I want to point out. Deirdre noted that throughout the course of the investigation, the officer in charge changed very, very frequently for one reason or another, whether that be a retirement or moving between departments, but unfortunately there was no consistency for her. Deirdre noted that 3 years after Carmel disappeared, the police came to her home looking for some DNA to take, but by this time there was absolutely no trace of Carmel left at that home. Carmel hadn't even been living with her mother before disappearing, so there was just unfortunately nowhere that they could take DNA from that belonged to Carmel at this time. However, the Police and Criminal Evidence, or PACE Act of 1984, that does say that fingerprints and various DNA samples can be taken on arrest, and we do know that Carmel had multiple charges relating to shoplifting. Normally, DNA would be taken for a more severe offence, and there are different rules when it comes to minors. And there is also a retention schedule that could affect for how long this information is kept in the police database, and some of them are deleted after between 2 to 3 years. I would like to believe that there is still fingerprint details on Carmel in the system, given the fact that she was actually charged and found guilty. However, it's anybody's guess as to whether or not there is actually any record of her DNA available at all. This might explain the purpose of the subsequent visit 3 years later in search of DNA. In 2002, the police announced that they were opening a murder investigation, treating her disappearance as very suspicious despite having no information or no evidence to that fact. This was based on the length of time that she had been missing and no other tips or leads that were made public. Deirdre was devastated when she heard this news. On the 21st of December 2006, Deirdre was one of a number of mums of missing children who wrote a letter that was publicised to their missing child, and I'm going to quote some excerpts from it for you now. It was titled, "Please Come Home for Christmas," and in this letter she does outline various things that Carmel has missed while she has been gone, including that her oldest sister Mandy had since had a second child, and her oldest brother Joe, who she used to refer to as Yo-Yo because she couldn't pronounce his name, he'd also had a child of his own. Joey called his daughter Cara Carmel after his sister, and Deirdre says, quote, "Cara loves looking at your photo. I tell her, this is Auntie Carmel. She isn't with us right now, but one day she'll come home and will love you so much." In May 2009, the Missing People charity, in conjunction with the Iceland grocery chain, they chose to feature Carmel's photo on over 800,000 cartons of milk. I think that was on a weekly basis in their stores. However, unfortunately, no fruitful leads came from this. In 2017, Dee publicly vocalised her frustration at the difference between the amount of publicity that was given to Madeleine McCann's case compared with that was given to Carmel. And as we've just touched on, nothing illustrates more clearly the impact that this has had on the family, particularly Carmel's mother Deirdre, than this Christmas letter from 2006 that Deirdre wrote to Carmel. And I'll continue to read little bits of it just to demonstrate exactly the impact that this had. Dee notes that every day since Carmel disappeared has been torture. Quote, "I miss you so much, my whole body aches with longing. Some nights I dream that I find you. I hug you and beg you to come home. You smile gently. Sorry, Mum, I'm not ready yet. You whisper, I'll be home soon. I wake up sobbing." And that just demonstrates something that's just really tragic. The majority of people, when they go to sleep, that's a bit of respite, that's their refuge. For a lot of people, dreams are a very positive, a very enjoyable experience. And yet every time Deirdre lays down to get a bit of rest, she is just tormented by these nightmares. As we've mentioned, Dee continues by explaining how when Carmel was younger, she couldn't pronounce Joey, so she did used to call her older brother Yo-Yo, and that, quote, "all the little ones call him that too," referring to Carmel's younger nieces and nephews now. "I close my eyes and I can hear your voice." And again, this is a situation that should bring joy to the hearts of many grandparents in particular, but yet such an innocent little thing can obviously just bring up so many painful memories that it's just traumatic. Unfortunately, in this case, police communication, or lack thereof, has just added to the family's distress. Dee advises that she heard from the family liaison officers for about the first month and then didn't hear anything again for 3 years. She also says that she's not been receiving regular updates, and at one point she received a phone call advising her that the case had been reopened, but she hadn't even been informed that it had been closed, and there had never been any hint of an outcome. So why it was closed, if indeed that is the case, I have no idea why. She also says that she found out that Carmel's case was being treated not as a missing person anymore, but as a murder inquiry over the phone. And as we've mentioned, that news absolutely devastated her. And I've seen some comments made by who I believe is still the current DCI in the case. I'm not going to say his name, but they're very, very insensitive. And although I suppose on the face of it, professionally speaking, there's nothing wrong, I think this person could do with some training in how to deal with the public and the family of somebody who's gone missing. It could do with a lot more tact, basically. Dee makes a comment that kind of sums it all up. She says, quote, "She wasn't the perfect little stereotype, but she's still my baby, my child. I don't love her any less because she wasn't perfect." And absolutely, it just goes to show the case should not be treated any differently at all, depending on where the family came from, what problems they may have had. Nobody is perfect, and every missing child, missing person deserves the same treatment. In the same letter that we've been discussing, Dee does go on to say, quote, "The house will be full at Christmas, but nothing can disguise the aching emptiness because you're not here. I know you'll understand why I haven't bought you any presents. For the first few years after you went, you always had a stocking stuffed with bath products and your favourite chocolates. But seeing those presents still under the tree on Boxing Day was unbearable." And this is something that is handled differently by different family members. Some, and different cases, some choose to still buy gifts for the missing loved ones, and here Dee is obviously just displaying the other side of that. It's too painful for her. And now it's been 21 years. I mean, Carmel would be in her late 30s now. She could potentially have her own family, and it's just devastating. The last little bit of that section does say, "If you can't join us this Christmas, please just ring and let me know you're okay. Honestly, darling, that's all I need." And there are various other discrepancies that just make things all the more harder for the family to deal with. For example, one thing I noticed and still have no explanation for is the fact that I've spoken to Dee and another family member. The date of disappearance is officially the 23rd of May 1998. But through various other sources, and one of those has actually been a police source, the date is actually quoted as being the 1st of May. And there is no explanation for that. Nobody knows where that date has come from. There were a couple of weeks between Carmel disappearing and it being reported, but she was known to have appeared at Camberwell Magistrates Court and have last been seen on the 23rd of May 1998. Dee has spent many years, in her own words, trawling the streets that Carmel was known to frequent. She has, quote, "kicked in drug houses, drug dens. She's broken into abandoned garages looking for any trace of her daughter, and she has apparently been threatened to back off. I'm not quite sure why or what the details were behind that, but she didn't find anything throughout any of these trawls, and now her health has suffered absolutely terribly. She continues to have nightmares. She has panic attacks. She no longer leaves the house. She is crippled with diabetes and arthritis, and she claims a lot of it is down to stress. And it's not isolated to Dee. She notes that her oldest daughter, Mandy, she suffers with Crohn's disease, and again, she puts a lot of this down to stress. For the first 5 years after Carmel went missing, Dee, she said that she was medicated and she was emotionless. She quoted herself as being robotic and just doing mum duties on autopilot. And even to this day, she still says she has no emotion in her body, and as a result, she shuns away from people, hence not leaving the house and not being able to build extra bonds and relationships that might help her through this difficult time. As we've noted, in 2017 it was publicised that Dee had criticised the difference, I want to make sure I say this properly, the difference between the amount of publicity that Madeleine McCann received and the amount of publicity that Carmel received. It is absolutely not to be taken that Dee begrudged any of that publicity to Madeleine and the cause to find her, but obviously she was highlighting that there was a number of quotes that she made, but that she felt because they were, quote, just off a council estate and not, quote, posh or professional or moneyed like the McCanns, Carmel didn't have anywhere near the resources thrown at her. Case like Maddie still has to this day, and that's tragic. No, every child deserves the same amount of resources and to be treated with the same amount of importance. Dee says, quote, "I love my child as much, if not more, than the next person. My kids are everything to me, the world to me." And you'll probably find every parent of every missing child would say the same. And there's no reason to disbelieve that. And Dee also goes on to explain once again that the impact has been significant on Casey, who is Carmel's younger sister, and the style of parenting that Dee adopted in the years subsequent to Carmel's disappearance. She says that Casey's life has been destroyed by this because she was about 5 or 6 years old at the time Carmel went missing. Quote, "She's never been allowed to do anything. Stay out, go anywhere, go to parties, stay in friends' houses. And as a result, she doesn't have that many friends now, and she's described by her own mother as being a bit of a loner." Dee even worries to this day, despite the fact that Casey is a grown woman, she has her own job, but if she's not home half an hour after the end of her night shift, Dee's on the phone to Casey's work, just to make sure that she's safe. Dee says, quote, "It's taken her childhood and freedom away." And the pattern repeats. As we've mentioned, Joey, Carmel's older brother, he's got 2 daughters of his own now, and Dee says, quote, "He is the strictest person." These days, Dee notes that the pain has gotten so much that she buries her head in the sand now. She says that if she doesn't think about Carmel in the same way that she thought about her originally, it's easier for her to believe that in the back of her head, she's just off living her own life, doing her own thing, and that's just easier to get on with life. I mean, she's still got to be a mum and a grandparent to others. And nobody can judge her for that. So when it comes to theories, the big one, as always, the main one that not just the police, but even by her own admission, Dee considered, at least for the first week, Carmel disappeared of her own accord. Now, we do know she left the home of her own accord. However, what happened after she left court is anybody's guess. She had always been known previously to make her own way back or to be seen, spotted by somebody, and Dee would go and find her. However, it would appear now that it's been over 2 decades and nobody has seen or heard from or recognised Carmel. That's pretty bad. So the likelihood of her having disappeared of her own accord is much slimmer now than it would have appeared back then. I think that if Carmel was pregnant, then absolutely she would have required some medical intervention between then and now, if not in the very first 9 months, then to birth a child, and it doesn't appear that that's been done. There's no children popped up anywhere, nobody's checked in, given birth using any details that were known to have been associated with Carmel. And a further concern is that if Carmel had chosen to disappear of her own accord, I think the chances are pretty strong that it would have been to go with her boyfriend, and he was found and claimed to have absolutely no knowledge as to what had happened to Carmel. So it's a bit strange if she was carrying his baby, why she would decide to up and leave everything. I just find that really hard to believe. One Reddit user opened up quite significantly about their own experience on the drug scene and on the homeless scene back in the local area in the short time following Carmel's disappearance. This user says that all of the homeless kids, they knew one another, and this Reddit user is absolutely certain Carmel was not amongst them. The same Redditor does note that there was a woman found in the homeless community in Brighton who not only fit Carmel's description but went by the name Carmel. However, she was never found to confirm or deny the fact that it was actually her or not. And the same Reddit user does go on to say that there has been a more recent photo taken of another woman sleeping rough in the London area, but again, I'm not sure what the connection is from this person to Carmel specifically, but it would appear that this woman has also not been found to be either confirmed as or ruled out as being Carmel. The family have heard absolutely all form of rumours over the years, from what you would probably consider to be the more positive ones, she's living here, she's living there, though unfortunately none have been substantiated, to the more really, really darker ones that I won't get into the detail on, but you can imagine the type. You know, people, they say things all the time. Probably the most common theory here is that Carmel fell prey to and came under harm as a result of foul play that could have arisen from a number of circumstances. A significant one, as we've touched on, It's probably to do with this alleged boyfriend of hers. You know, maybe there was a gap of a day in which Carmel was known to have arrived in London before she was arrested by the police, where she could well have met up with this person and maybe could have told him the news that she was, or she believed she was expecting a baby. I don't suppose it's too far out of the realm of possibility that he did not want the child or was not happy with the news, and maybe he decided that he was going to deal with it in a more permanent way. However, it is not confirmed that Carmel actually was pregnant. This was all rumour, albeit by her own mouth, but it's still rumour, and there's nothing to suggest that she did actually make it to tell this individual. In this time period, on the 22nd of May, there is a big window, as we've said. She could have met up with any number of people. This drug dealer, he would not have been her only associate in the drug scene, so there is a lot of potential for other people to have gotten involved. There is potential for some form of trafficking. The Reddit user that we've mentioned does go on to say that it was so much easier at the time, speaking from their personal experience, to get a false passport and leave the country. And this is a possibility. Maybe Carmel had left the country, whether by her own or somebody else's accord, and maybe that's why we've not found her. For me, it does still keep coming back to this boyfriend, though. If she left Camberwell Magistrates Court with £1, it wasn't enough to get a bus or a train back home, certainly not a taxi, and Mum didn't drive. She didn't really have many options, and if this boyfriend was known to give her money now and then, it's entirely feasible that she went back to him after leaving the court, and maybe that's where she disappeared from. Outside of Carmel's safety, my biggest concern, if she was pregnant, is where is that baby? Literally, this is twice as urgent as anything else, because you're potentially not talking about one person here, you're talking about two, and there is severe need for, or at least there was when she went missing, severe need for medical intervention again, if this pregnancy rumour is true. I'm probably going to change up this section because it's very, very difficult to find any rays of light in these cases. I don't want to remove it entirely. There are usually one or two, albeit quite small, and especially in the last case, Ezra's case, I struggled so much. So I'm going to just point out two little things from this case, but I found a story yesterday that I found was absolutely fabulous, and I do want to share it with you, and it is incredibly relevant to missing persons cases. Dee Fenech was absolutely adamant that the, quote, one saving grace from the entire police investigation was a PC by the name of Matt Robinson. She says he was, quote, an amazing man. He went above and beyond when it came to dealing with both Carmel and Deirdre, and to this day it's very heartwarming to know that despite him moving to a different continent entirely, he still, after 21 years, maintains contact with Deirdre when it comes to Carmel. I hope that wherever he finds himself, that he is able to make it as much of a difference now as he clearly has made to Carmel's family. And Dee also wants to emphasise the massive work that the Missing People UK charity do. She said, quote, "The charity has been a major source of support since my little girl disappeared. And if you'll remember, it was thanks to them and the Iceland chain of stores that managed to feature Carmel's face on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of milk cartons. Although this led to nothing, this is the type of action that we really need and is so desperately lacking in this case." Now, one big ray of light that is independent of this case, but I wanted to bring it here for a particular reason. I came across a story yesterday, and forgive me, it's a Russian story, so I'm probably not going to get the pronunciations right. A young lady by the name of Yulia Moisenko disappeared at the age of 4 in 1999 while on a train from Minsk to Osipovichy in Belarus with her father, who had fallen asleep. Yulia's biological mother, Ludmila Moisenko, she said she never lost hope that one day she would be reunited with her daughter. Quote, "We were travelling, searching and writing leaflets. We were living with the hope that we would find her. We loved her, were waiting and hoping." and as a absolutely fantastic turn of events that you don't get all that often, so you really have to hold on to them when you get them. What happened was the dream of absolutely every parent of every missing child in the world. A DNA test has confirmed that this 24-year-old lady was indeed the missing child of the Moisinko family. She had been living 885 kilometers from where she went missing across the border into Ryazan, Western Russia. She had been raised in Russia by a foster family who adopted her. Now, the specific details of her journey when she went missing from this train in Belarus to ending up in Western Russia, they are unknown. However, it is absolutely phenomenal to see that not only is she safe and well and happy now and reunited with her family, but that she never made it into the hands of darkness, and she never suffered. She was given a really good upbringing, even by her own words. So that's just an amazing story that after 20 years, this young lady has been found. So it gives us hope that other people missing after such a long time, for example Carmel, might well still be found, and we might have a successful outcome in this story. So I'm going to run Carmel's description by you again. She is described as a white female. She is half Maltese and has a Mediterranean complexion. She has brown eyes and dark brown, black shoulder length hair at the time she went missing. She was very slimly built and she was about 5 foot tall. She has a visible horizontal 2-inch scar in the middle of her forehead and potentially a less visible scar by her mouth as well. She usually wears jeans and trainers and has one leg shorter than the other, which does cause her to limp. There is a quote here now from Sussex Police that I would really like to believe, and I'm going to hold on to. Quote, "It is a difficult inquiry. We are investigating it and assisting the Metropolitan Police. I want to stress though that we never give up on these jobs. But the longer the time goes on, the more difficult it becomes. We're doing everything we can." I really hope that's true. Sussex Police, if you have any information, the Crawley branch, they can be contacted on 0845, this is from the UK, 607 0999. Alternatively, you can contact the National Missing Persons Bureau from the UK again on 0808 100 877. I'll have that information in the contact details below. And again, I just want to leave you on one final line, going right back to the one letter we've used throughout the whole episode, the 21st of December 2006 letter written for Christmas for Carmel from her mum Deirdre. Quote, "Please, just ring and let me know you are okay. Honestly, darling, that's all I need." So, thank you very much once again for joining me for episode 5 of Missing the Missing, where we have discussed Carmel Fenech's case. This is the first episode that we've done where I haven't been able to find one other video or podcast on this case. So you won't find any of those linked down below. So, glad to be the first one. Let's see if we can get a discussion going. Let's see if we can shake up some tips. Please, if you have any information, use the contact details that I mentioned in the video or that will be linked down below, and let's see if we can finally bring some closure to this case and find out where Carmel and potentially even her baby are at. Thank you once again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!